Hashtag a single dad missed his boss's hints, until she knocked his door and yelled, "You're fired." The sound of knuckles rapping against wood echoed through Mark's small apartment like thunder. He froze, spoon of cereal halfway to his mouth, as 7-year-old Emma looked up from her homework with wide eyes. It was 7:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. Who could possibly be at their door? The knocking came again, more insistent this time, followed by a voice he recognized instantly. "Mark. Open this door right now." It was Catherine Chen, his boss. The same boss who'd been giving him strange looks all week. The same boss who'd left cryptic notes on his desk. The same boss who'd tried to corner him after meetings, only for Mark to rush away with mumbled excuses about picking up Emma. What happened next would change everything. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories that will tug at your heartstrings. Your support means everything to us. 6 months earlier, Mark Donovan had been drowning. Not literally, though some days, that might have felt like a mercy. He was drowning in grief, in responsibility, in the crushing weight of being everything to his daughter while feeling like nothing himself. "Daddy, we're going to be late again," Emma said, her small fingers tugging at his wrinkled shirt sleeve. Her lunch wasn't packed. Her hair wasn't brushed. And Mark had exactly 17 minutes to get her to school before heading to his job at Chen Innovations, where he'd already been warned about tardiness twice this month. "I know, sweetheart. I know." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, eyes burning from another night of minimal sleep. "Just, give Daddy 1 minute. 1 minute." That's all he ever asked for, but it was never enough. Not since Sarah had died 14 months ago, taking with her the organized chaos of their family life and leaving behind only the chaos. Mark worked as a mid-level marketing analyst at Chen Innovations, a tech startup that had recently secured major funding. The company was growing rapidly, and expectations were high. His boss, Catherine Chen, had built the company from nothing, her reputation for brilliance matched only by her exacting standards. Mark had once thrived under that pressure. Now, he was barely surviving it. "Mr. Donovan." Catherine's voice cut through the office noise as Mark slipped into the weekly team meeting 7 minutes late. "How kind of you to join us." "I'm sorry, Miss Chen. Emma's teacher needed to save it." She gestured to an empty chair. "We were just discussing the Westfield account. Since you're handling their social media strategy, perhaps you'd like to update us?" Mark fumbled through his presentation, acutely aware of Catherine's narrowed eyes and the sympathetic glances from colleagues. He'd once been the department star, creative, reliable, ahead of deadlines. Now he was the office charity case, the widower everyone pitied but increasingly resented for picking up his slack. That night, after tucking Emma into bed, Mark collapsed onto his couch, surrounded by unwashed dishes and unfolded laundry. His phone buzzed with an email notification. From Catherine Chen. Subject: Performance concerns. *, we need to discuss your recent work. My office, tomorrow, 9 a.m. *. Mark's stomach clenched. He couldn't lose this job. Not with Emma's school tuition, not with the medical bills still coming from Sarah's final months, not with the promise he'd made to his dying wife that he'd give their daughter everything she deserved. He didn't sleep that night. "You look terrible," Catherine said bluntly when Mark entered her office the next morning. "Thank you for your concern," he replied, immediately regretting the sarcasm. Catherine Chen was not what most people expected when they heard tech CEO. At 42, she wore her success like armor, designer suits, immaculate makeup, not a single gray hair in her sleek black bob. But it was her eyes that commanded attention, dark, intelligent, and utterly uncompromising. "Sit down, Mark." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Your work on the Westfield account is subpar. The content calendar is disorganized, the messaging inconsistent, and you've missed 2 client calls this month." "I know. I'm sorry. I've been Struggling. Yes, I'm aware. Catherine's expression softened fractionally. It's been over a year since your wife passed. The company has been patient, Mark. I've been patient. But this isn't a charity. Mark felt heat rising in his face. I don't want charity. Good, because I'm not offering it. She slid a folder across the desk. This is a performance improvement plan. You have 30 days to meet these benchmarks, or we'll have to reconsider your position here. Mark stared at the folder, his vision blurring slightly. I understand. Do you? Catherine leaned forward. Because I'm not convinced you do. This isn't just about metrics, Mark. It's about presence. You're physically here, but mentally? You're a ghost walking through these halls. The assessment stung because it was true. Mark had been going through the motions, doing the minimum to keep his job while reserving his real energy for Emma. But even with her, he knew he wasn't fully present, too exhausted, too overwhelmed, too lost in grief to be the father she deserved. I'll do better, he promised, not knowing how. Catherine studied him for a long moment. See that you do. For 2 weeks, Mark tried. He stayed late after putting Emma to bed with a neighbor watching her. He reorganized the Westfield campaign. He set alarms for client calls. He drank more coffee than any human should reasonably consume. But then Emma got sick, nothing serious, just a standard childhood fever that nonetheless required him to work from home for 2 days. When he returned, Catherine was waiting by his desk. The Westfield presentation. Where is it? Mark's blood ran cold. The presentation due today. The one he'd meant to finish last night but had fallen asleep beside Emma's bed instead. It's not quite ready. Catherine's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. Disappointment, perhaps. Or decision. My office. End of day. The rest of the day passed in a blur of panic as Mark tried to salvage the presentation while keeping up with his other responsibilities. By 6 o'clock, he had something that was presentable if not impressive. He knocked on Catherine's door with the resignation of a man approaching the gallows. But her office was empty. A note on her desk simply read, *, had to leave. We'll discuss tomorrow. *. Mark exhaled shakily, grateful for the reprieve. He left the presentation on her desk and headed home, stopping to pick up soup for Emma and medicine from the pharmacy. The next day, Catherine wasn't in the office. Nor the day after. An administrative assistant mentioned something about an emergency with a major client. Mark used the time to catch up, to prove he could still be valuable to the company. When Catherine returned 3 days later, she didn't call him into her office. Instead, she stopped by his desk, glanced at his computer screen where he was working on a new campaign, and simply said, "Better. Keep it up." It wasn't exactly high praise, but Mark felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Maybe he could do this after all. Maybe he could be both a good father and a good employee. Maybe he didn't have to choose. Over the next few weeks, something strange began to happen. Catherine started appearing in unexpected places, in the break room when Mark went for coffee, in the elevator when he was leaving for the day, even once at the sandwich shop near the office where he sometimes grabbed lunch. Their conversations were brief, professional, but there was something different in her manner. She asked about Emma. She mentioned a book she'd read that related to one of his campaigns. Once, she even brought him coffee, black, no sugar, exactly how he liked it. "You look like you need this more than I do," she'd said, placing it on his desk before walking away. Mark wasn't sure what to make of these interactions. Was she monitoring him more closely? Was this some kind of psychological tactic to keep him on his toes? Or was Catherine Chen, the notoriously demanding boss who made junior executives cry, actually being nice? Then came the notes. Small yellow post-its appearing on his desk with cryptic messages. Asterisk, good work on the Henderson pitch. Asterisk. Asterisk, your idea for the holiday campaign has potential. Expand on it. Asterisk. Asterisk, working late tonight? So am I. Asterisk. That last one had appeared on a Thursday when Mark had arranged for Emma to have a sleepover at her friend's house so he could catch up on work. He'd found Catherine in the conference room at 8 p.m., surrounded by spreadsheets and takeout containers. Join me, she'd said, pushing a box of Thai food toward him. Unless you have somewhere else to be? No, Mark had replied, surprised by the invitation. Emma's at a friend's tonight. They'd worked side by side for hours, their conversation gradually shifting from work to more personal topics. Catherine spoke about building her company, the sacrifices she'd made, the relationships that had fallen by the wayside. It's worth it, she'd said, though something in her voice suggested doubt. At least, that's what I tell myself at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep. Mark had found himself telling her about Sarah, how they'd met in college, how they'd planned their life together, how cancer had stolen their future in a matter of months. Emma is the only thing that keeps me going some days, he admitted. But I worry I'm failing her too. Catherine had looked at him then with an expression he couldn't quite read. You're not failing, Mark. You're surviving. There's courage in that. When they'd finally left the building at midnight, Mark had felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: connection. Understanding. Maybe even the beginnings of friendship. But the next day, Catherine was all business again, barely acknowledging him in the morning meeting. Mark told himself he'd imagined the moment of closeness between them. Catherine Chen didn't do friendship, especially not with employees on probation. The invitations continued, though. Working dinners that stretched into conversations about life. A Saturday afternoon strategy session that somehow included Catherine asking to see pictures of Emma. A company happy hour where she'd sat beside him instead of with the other executives. Mark began to wonder if there was something more happening, if Catherine's interest might extend beyond professional concern. The thought both terrified and intrigued him. He hadn't considered dating since Sarah's death, hadn't had the emotional energy, let alone the time. And Catherine Chen? She was his boss. She was intimidating. She was brilliant and beautiful and completely out of his league. But there were moments, a lingering glance, a touch on his arm that lasted a beat too long, a smile that transformed her usually serious face, that made him wonder. Then came the invitation that couldn't be misinterpreted. Asterisk, dinner tomorrow night? Not work-related. My place. 8 p.m. Asterisk. Mark stared at the note, heart pounding. This was definitely crossing a line from professional to personal. He should say no. He had responsibilities. He had Emma. He had a job he couldn't afford to complicate. But he also had a life that had been on pause for too long. And Catherine, difficult, demanding Catherine, had somehow become the person who made him feel most alive. He texted his regular babysitter, confirming she could watch Emma. Then he wrote his response on a post-it and left it on Catherine's desk. Asterisk, I'll be there. Asterisk. Mark spent the next day alternating between anticipation and panic. What should he wear? Should he bring wine? Was this actually a date, or had he completely misread the situation? What if it was just another work discussion and he showed up with romantic expectations? By the time he dropped Emma off at the babysitter's, he'd changed his outfit 3 times and bought and returned 2 different bottles of wine, finally settling on a moderately priced Cabernet that wouldn't embarrass him either way. Catherine lived in a sleek high-rise downtown, the kind of building with a doorman and an elevator that required a key card. Mark gave his name, was checked against a list, and directed to the penthouse. Of course Catherine lived in the penthouse. His palms were sweating as he knocked on her door. When it opened, he momentarily forgot how to speak. Catherine Chen in the office was intimidating. Catherine Chen at home, in slim jeans and a cashmere sweater, hair loose around her shoulders and feet bare, was something else entirely. "You're right on time," she said, taking the wine from his hands. "I appreciate punctuality." "Force of habit," Mark replied, following her into an apartment that was surprisingly warm and inviting, with comfortable furniture and art on the walls. "Your home is beautiful." "Thank you." She gestured for him to sit at a dining table already set for two, candles flickering between elegant place settings. "I hope you like Italian. I ordered from Vincenzo's." "I love Italian." Mark watched as she opened the wine and poured 2 glasses. "Catherine, I have to ask, what is this? I mean, why did you invite me here?" She handed him a glass, her fingers brushing against his. "I thought that was obvious." "Nothing about you is obvious to me," he admitted. Catherine smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Fair enough. I invited you here because I wanted to spend time with you outside the office. Because over the past few weeks, I've seen something in you that interests me. And because life is too short to waste time wondering, what if?" Mark took a sip of wine, buying himself time to process her words. "I'm still on probation at work." "Technically, yes. Isn't this a conflict of interest?" Catherine sat across from him, her dark eyes serious. "It could be. If we decide to pursue whatever this is between us, I'll have to recuse myself from decisions about your employment. Your department would report to my COO instead of directly to me." The fact that she'd already thought this through, that she was prepared with solutions, told Mark this wasn't an impulsive invitation. "I have Emma to consider," he said quietly. "I know. And I respect that she comes first in your life. She always should." Catherine leaned forward slightly. "I'm not asking for commitments, Mark. I'm suggesting we explore this connection between us and see where it leads. No pressure. No expectations." Mark studied her face, searching for any sign of insincerity or manipulation. He found none. Just a woman, brilliant, complex, and perhaps a little vulnerable, taking a risk. "I'd like that," he finally said. Dinner was delicious, the conversation easy and engaging. They talked about books they loved, places they'd traveled, dreams they still harbored. Catherine was funny and insightful, passionate about ideas in a way that made Mark remember his own former enthusiasm for life. When the evening ended, she walked him to the door. There was a moment of tension, of possibility, but Mark didn't move to kiss her. It was too soon, too complicated. Instead, he thanked her for dinner and promised to see her Monday. Catherine's smile held a hint of disappointment, but also understanding. Monday, then. Monday brought a new complication. As Mark arrived at the office, he was greeted by whispers and curious glances. Apparently, someone had seen him entering Catherine's building Saturday night. Office gossip moved at light speed. Catherine addressed it head-on in the morning meeting. "Before we begin, I'd like to address the rumors circulating. My personal life is my business, as is Mr. Donovan's. However, to avoid any appearance of impropriety, effective immediately, the marketing department will report to Mr. Patel rather than directly to me. That's all I'll say on the matter." The announcement caused a fresh wave of whispers, but it also demonstrated Catherine's commitment to handling their potential relationship ethically. Mark appreciated that, even as he felt the weight of his colleagues' stares throughout the day. Over the next few weeks, Mark and Catherine developed a careful routine. Professional distance at work, occasional dinners, or conversations outside it. They moved slowly, both aware of the complications their relationship could create. Emma remained Mark's priority, but as Catherine gradually entered their lives, he was surprised by how naturally she fit. She never tried to replace Sarah or overstep boundaries, but she brought a steadying presence that both Mark and Emma had been missing. The first time Catherine came over for dinner at their apartment, Emma had been shy but curious. "Daddy says you're his boss," she'd said, studying Catherine with the direct gaze of a child. At work, yes, Catherine had replied. But here, I'm just Catherine. Do you like macaroni and cheese? I helped make it. I love macaroni and cheese. Especially when it's made by such a talented chef. By the end of the evening, Emma was showing Catherine her collection of rocks and explaining why each one was special. Mark watched them together, a complicated emotion rising in his chest. Not guilt, exactly, but awareness of change. Of possibilities. Of life continuing in ways he hadn't anticipated. 3 months into their cautious relationship, Mark realized he was happy. Not the frantic, barely keeping it together survival mode he'd been in since Sarah's death, but genuinely content. His work had improved dramatically. His home felt like a home again, not just a place to crash between.